The technique I'm going to teach you today, it's a mixture of my mindfulness techniques, which mindfulness teaches you to listen to yourself, to sit with your thoughts and become an observer. You don't judge them, you don't get frustrated with them, you don't have any feelings towards them. And then my definition of NLP is using your creativity to better yourself. So I looked at both of these things and put it together and made this wonderful pattern for silencing your inner critic.
Half of the Sundays, and I've got the camera on for half of them, and what I get out of turning up here every Sunday is incredible. You know, sometimes you have a crappy week, we turn up here again on Sunday, we have this beautiful community, we share openly and vulnerably, and then we learn about a subject, and we actually have, in some ways, it feels like we're in a lecture hall, and it's just like the 20 of us are here all together, but we're enjoying the class and loving it. Okay, Amy, Alyce, please tell us about yourself, and whenever you're ready, roll in and start away.
So hello everyone, my name is Amy Alyce. I have been an NLP practitioner for the past year. I have been practicing mindfulness for the last 7 years. I am a woman's emotional wellness advocate. And as Dina would call me, the original boss lady. A funny thing that the technique I'm going to teach you today, it's a mixture of my mindfulness techniques, which mindfulness teaches you to listen to yourself, to sit with your thoughts and become an observer. You don't judge them, you don't get frustrated with them, you don't have any feelings towards them. And then my definition of NLP is using your creativity to better yourself. So I looked at both of these things and put it together and made this wonderful pattern for silencing your inner critic. So I want you to remember a time that you felt really hyped up, you felt powerful, and you're ready to take on any challenge. Nobody could tell you no, you are ready. And then in came that inner critic. So it makes me wonder, what is your interaction with your inner critic usually like? For some, they may see pictures, they may have feelings, and for others, they might hear something in their ear. So I want you to think about what that is like. What is your interaction like? And let me know. You can unmute or you can put it in your chat if you're feeling shy. What is your interaction with your inner critic usually like?
My inner critic is like a bloody ninja. My inner critic is skilled. It can like hide and it can like jump out and surprise.
It's really interesting.
My
Yes,
inner
Darko?
critic is okay. Go ahead, Darko.
My inner critic is not, there is no interaction, it is just telling one way. No interaction.
No interaction, just telling you. And Jenny?
Oh, she's fierce. She's just
Fierce.
diabolic. Yeah, she's just fierce and diabolic. She just does her thing. But I found a little way to get around her. Yes, yes, yes.
Nice, nice. Alicia says, us visual learners appreciate it. You're welcome. Ray says, voices in my head with a lot of sensible counter arguments. Jackie says, thoughts running, resentment towards authority, bosses, and unrealistic expectation. Yeah, yeah. And my inner critic sounds like my mother. Why would I do that? That makes sense? Stop that. Those who don't hear will feel, stuff like that. Things that I've heard since I was a child. Do you find that your inner critic also sounds like maybe people when you were a child? Maybe saying the same things they said? Or is it your own voice saying things to you?
In my case, I think it's my voice. My own voice.
Your
I
voice.
have created during the years.
It's your own voice you have created during the years. Okay.
Yes.
And is the voice loud? Is it coming from outside of you or inside of you?
It's directive and it is inside me, but it is pretty directive
It's inside you, it's pretty directive
and dominative. Dominated.
and dominating. So Jackie also says sometimes sounds like her old boss, father, mother. Yeah, can sound like your boss and sound like your mom, can sound like your dad. Nang says, I can relate to that. The inner critic sounds like my mother, and that echoes over decades. Yeah, because sometimes our inner critic is the people that grew us, or it could be your teacher, like how Jackie said, boss. So, what if I told you the part of you that's constantly criticizing and judging you could be transformed? What would you be able to achieve that you couldn't before? Just have a think about it. So before I get into how we can transform it, I want you to know that according to several theories and therapeutic approaches, people are made up of fragments or different parts. In transactional analysis, this is called the parent, the adult, and the child. In internal family systems, the protector, the exile, the manager. Ego state therapy, the adaptive child, the critical parent, and the nurturing parent. You also have it in Jungian psychology, gestalt therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, and a lot of other theories as well. So you've heard of the inner child, the shadow self, your hidden self, the inner critic, and the list goes on. However, in NLP, we just call them parts so that you can give them names and definitions. So I want you to think of parts like this. You have the self. This is the observer. This is the part of you that hears each of the thoughts or feelings of these other parts. So you have positive parts, and then you also have negative parts. And these parts develop over the years while you were a child, your young adult part, your inner teen. There's a lot of parts inside you. Some of them tend to be more active than others, and some of them work unconsciously. That is, you're not exactly sure when they are working. But I like to look at them as different pieces of a puzzle that makes up you. The thing about these parts is they stay alive in a sense until they are no longer useful. But the thing is, they decide when they are no longer useful. So while you may think that your inner critic is useful and they're stopping you from going further in your life, and it's stopping you from advancing in your career, and it's just stopping you, your inner critic believes that its purpose in your life is still useful, and as such, it doesn't go away. So each part has its own values, beliefs, thoughts, and memories that they operate out of. So my question is, looking at these 4 parts, the second part is actually the critic is criticizing you, a different part. So looking at these 4 parts, what values, thoughts, beliefs, and memories do you think they could possibly have? So let's start with the first one over here. What kind of thought do you think this part could have?
Looks like a woo celebration.
Yeah. It's like celebrating, it's happy. So what kind of memory would that be? When would that part come out? What kind of thought would this part have?
Maybe an early success in a hobby or activity.
Okay, early success. Yeah, sure. Anybody else? There's literally no right or wrong answers. It's just like, look at the picture. When do you think this could come out?
When he's happy.
Yeah.
When you're about to do something uncomfortable or something new.
Something uncomfortable, something new. What did you say, Darko? I didn't hear you.
When this part is happy.
When the person's happy. Okay, and let's look at what I'm going to coin as our inner critic for this conversation. What kind of beliefs does the inner critic have? What kind of thoughts do they have?
For the second picture, the two people argue.
So in this one, I want it to be more like you have an idea, and then the inner critic is like, no, you need to stop that right now.
Like, who do you think
Yeah.
you are?
Like, who do
You
you
aren't
think you are?
smart enough.
You aren't smart enough. It wants to keep you small. Nice
Yeah,
one,
or
Maria.
you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't want that. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't X.
And now, what kind of memories do you think it could have?
Mostly negative memories.
Mostly negative memories?
Like a parent saying, you know, why would you even bother doing that? Or where's your second plan? Or who are you to think that?
That's very nice, Jackie. It could be a
You
parent.
did that wrong. You know, you put your Lego together the wrong way, Sonny.
You can see friends making fun, laughing at your previous failures.
Could be friends laughing at your failures. Yeah. Yeah. And what do you think this other one would have? What kind of thoughts? What kind of beliefs? This
That's like
sad
a
one on the floor.
total collapse.
A total collapse.
Shame. Bitterness, regret.
Shame. Bitterness, regret. Let's do it tomorrow. Procrastination, as Ray says.
I want to die.
I want to die. Yeah, it
Make
could
the
be a very
pain
sad
go
point.
away.
Make the pain go away. Really powerful stuff. And then this last one.
This is positive. It says, I can do it. One more thing I have done. One thing I have done. I checked.
One thing I have to check. You got that off your list.
Or it's saying, I haven't learned that skill yet, but I will.
I haven't learned that skill yet.
But I will.
This one look like it's saying, they don't know who they're dealing with. I'm the original boss lady.
They don't know who they're dealing with. So as you can see, just looking at these parts, some of them obviously are positive and some of them are more negative, low down. But I think I want you to play with is that all parts of you, including your critic, including the depressed, procrastinating part, all of them want something positive for you. They believe that through their actions, they will get you to some sort of positive benefit. Even when it feels like it is not positive, this can't go right. What is wrong with this thing? Why it can't just stop? This thing just in my ears and ding. Just please, I just want some peace. It actually wants something good for you. So let's say you decide that, last night I did really well in KTV. And today I have an idea. I want to go sing on the stage because my friends told me my KTV skills was good, so I can sing. And then your inner critic comes in and is like, you're mad? You never yet sing a day. You never yet sing a day in your life. You want people to laugh at you? That's because these parts, while they want the same things, or maybe different things, they're disconnected. They're all connected to the self, but sometimes they're disconnected from each other. And so while the inner critic is yelling at you and telling you don't know what you want, what is a positive thing that it could want for you here?
Clarity.
I didn't hear you, Darko.
Clarity.
You want clarity? Mm-hmm.
Mm.
A backup plan?
Could want a backup plan. Mm-hmm. That's a nice one, Jackie.
Protect you.
You could want to protect you. Anything else? So even though it's saying all these nasty things, all these things that's stopping you from moving forward, why is it stopping us from moving forward?
It may allow enough time to get prepared more.
You might want us to get prepared more. There may be a fear of change, as Maria says. There may be a fear of judgment, a fear of failure, and it could be stopping us from moving forward. So it's not necessarily that the inner critic wants bad things for us. It's not necessarily that the inner critic wants us to be sad, wants us to feel bad. It's just that the way I see it is it doesn't have the necessary resources to tell us what it wants in a good way. So while it wants to protect us, it fears judgment. It doesn't want us to experience judgment. It doesn't have the right tools and the right ways to speak to us. So I'm going to give you some messages from a critic in these scenarios, and we'll see what the positive message could be in each of them. So let's say we're going to do some public speaking. And it says, you're going to embarrass yourself. What if people think you're silly? What's the possible positive message that it's trying to give us? What's the possible positive thing that it wants for us?
Keep us safe. Keep her
Keep us
safe.
safe.
A
I'll let them
positive can
message you.
be you need to make sure that you're prepared, yeah, before you do give the speech. Practice, 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 so that you won't embarrass yourself.
It could be projection. You know, that person might have failed or is nervous himself or herself, and they don't want you to experience that same experience.
Alicia says imposter syndrome or past traumas. Anything else?
I just want to use that perhaps with that past traumas, right? It could be, you know, you could remind her of another time she didn't necessarily speak on stage, but maybe a time she stood up and asked a question in class. It could have been a much smaller event that started it, like asking a question in class, and it may have built up to speaking in front of people, to speaking on the stage. So it could have the roots through a thread of little traumas.
could have roots in traumas.
But it's come up for resolution, perhaps.
What did you mean by come up for a resolution, Adrian?
Another way of seeing it is that the critic has come up now, and the idea there is that the critic has come up now so that we can solve it. I use that a bit in relationships, you know, when people are having a problem, it's like, well, congratulations, now you know where the problem is. It was hiding before, now your inner critic is telling you something, you know, or maybe you can actually use it as a time to work back through and solve it. Yep. It's come up for resolution. Come up to be
Come up for resolution. Which is, you know, that's actually, even though I wrote silencing the inner critic, is actually learning to work together with your inner critic. That's a real underlining tone that I want you guys to get from this talk, is that your inner critic may sound like they're trying to drag you down, but they really want you, they really want to protect you. They really want you to remind you of a time that you didn't succeed, or they just want you to do better. The issue is sometimes they don't have, again, the tools to speak to you in a nicer way. So let's say you're offering a service or you're starting a business, and then your inner critic comes up and says, no one's going to buy this. You're not experienced enough. What does your critic want you to know instead? Come on. Give me the answers. There's no wrong answers here.
Do your research.
Time to grow. Haven't done enough research. Do your research. Good job. Thanks, Alicia, Maria, Jackie.
Maybe get more experience. It could be through volunteer job, through something like that, to get more experience.
Get more experience. Research. Anything else?
I wonder if that could be a seed or a part that a lot of lifelong learners have. Because if, you know, these lifelong learners included, I wonder if there's a part of me that says that, and that's how I counteract that. I counteract that by constantly learning.
I'm not sure what you mean, Adrian.
I just saw a post before on social media. It was something along the lines of someone that studies and someone that studies for life. Like they're constantly learning, and every bit of feedback is an opportunity to learn, and a good day and a bad day are both opportunities to learn. But the underlying part or driver could be this deep down little critic going, you're not experienced enough. Okay, so I'll learn more. You're not experienced enough, I'll learn more.
We'll learn more,
Of
yeah.
course, yeah.
Yeah, and then you end up in this long loop of learning more and doing more and wanting to be more.
Yeah, and if you were a yoga person and you did more and more and more and more, by the time you'd done 10 years of yoga, you'd probably be an absolute yoga master doing all kinds of things, and people would go, wow, that guy is so good. Not realizing there's a part underneath which is constantly telling you, you're not good enough. Experience enough.
You're not good enough. And maybe you'll never be good enough.
Right? You see the big people at the gym, you know, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
And do you think these people are working with their inner critic, or they're working against them?
That's the good question, isn't it? That's the question there.
Learn how to deal with sale objections. Having some skills empower us to silence that critic, but not using them as a crutch for inaction. What do you mean about not using them as a crutch for inaction, Alicia?
Because sometimes like what you guys were kind of alluding to. You have the people who are lifelong learners, which is great because you are going to be a lifelong learner and that keeps you current. But then you have people who always want one more certification because they have imposter syndrome and they never actually do the work or do the action or learn from their mistakes.
Mm. Mm. That one's actually big. That's actually big. Thanks, Alicia. Let's look at the next one. Trying to set boundaries in a relationship. You're being difficult and they'll be upset with you. How dare you set boundaries in a relationship? What does this inner critic want you to know?
Don't go too far out on your own, like kind of that group herd effect. Approval
Don't go to
seeking. Yeah, be careful with that.
approval seeking. Be careful with that. Not to sacrifice yourself for others.
In another way, with this particular one, the inner critic is questioning something that they've done before. Like in the text, it presupposes that she's done something, and they're saying that you're being difficult. So
Yeah.
that critic is also giving her a review.
Yeah, it could be saying, remember a time.
It's having
Like-
her question the way she's setting boundaries, questioning her values, perhaps, questioning which could lead to self-inquiry. Could lead to self-inquiry.
This inner critic could also be warning you of a time that you didn't have boundaries and you tried to set their boundaries and then it backfired on you. You know, warning you towards cautiousness. Could also be people pleasing, not wanting to upset others, even though they're hurting / upsetting you. Sometimes our inner critic, they're pretty wise. They may not always seem like it, but they're pretty wise. Alicia says, could also have history where you were emotionally abused or gaslighted. Yeah. And it's asking you to check yourself, question yourself. You want to be careful. They want to protect you. Especially by narcissists. Okay, so this one doesn't have an overarching theme. What if you fail? You should stick to the evil that you know. You don't know what's out there.
Trying to protect you, but there is no such thing as failure, just lessons learned. So I reframe that to say, well, failure doesn't exist. It's just a learning curve for me. And I don't want to stick to the evil that I know. I want to learn new stuff. So
You want to learn new evil, Jenny?
well, you should stick to the evil that you know. That can be reframed too, because everything in this world has a space and a time, there. So, but there is no such thing as failure. It's just lessons learned over time.
Okay. So we can teach our inner critic that there is no such thing as failure.
And Jenny mentioned timing. And timing is normally unspoken and unconscious. So every desire we've ever got, ever wanted, there was a time when we didn't even want it. There was a time when we So the whole time element is left out of most of our thinking. So this, what if you fail? the whole time element is missed out. And I guess inner critics and parts of us also have a distorted or a poor conception of a time frame.
Right, since our inner critic sometimes is working with the past, most of the time is working with the past. So the past only has limitations. And it's also, you know, as I said, possibly disconnected from the other parts that sees the failure, that sees the successes. And then we have one last one. This one says, you always mess things up. You should have known better. Always.
Here is a lot of mind reading. You know, always
of mind
using generalization. It is a lot of generalization. So we need to be more specific. What does that always mean?
What does
Adverbs
that
of
always mean?
adverb of frequency. Always doesn't have to mean really always.
It is not
right.
always.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And always sure. Yes, and as you say, it is based on our perception of our past experiences.
So perhaps according to what the inner critic knows, it's always. According to what they know, according to the information they're drawing on, the resources that they have. Yes. And let's look at the second part. You should have known better.
It's very frequent.
It's very frequent, Darko.
Again, I'm thinking projection by, again, it could be an individual who maybe had that similar experience and they're kind of putting it out onto you. Not in a bad way, but like you said, that their lack of tools, or that is a method.
Yeah, Jackie, yeah. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? What's the positive here?
Not going to take a stab, but what Darko said about the universal quantifier in there of always, that's wonderful to teach your kids. Everyone should teach their kids those universal quantifiers, you know, the always, never, you know, because I've got a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they both pick them up all the time. And when our parents are in great moods, we're not as bad, perhaps. But if we get angry, that's a time when the always and the nevers, you know, come out a lot. So if you got kids, train them in some of the we call it the meta model, and that's particular one is called a universal quantifier, universe quantify. And when you know, 6-year-olds and 10-year-olds can learn the linguistic patterns. And if you have kids that are young learning the linguistic patterns, they're really setting themselves up for success. Unlike Hollywood, that's setting us up with all kinds of great self-talk.
Unlike our inner critic, that's also setting yourself for great self-talk, always. You know, funny, Adrian brought up the meta model. That's actually part of the process that I use. So now I'm going to guide you through. So first I'm going to show you the entire steps, and then I'm going to guide you through it slowly so that you know how the steps work. And we're going to look at your inner critic. And I need you to take on an air of curiosity. Okay? So even though your inner critic, they know you best, they know how to push your buttons, they know what to say to you to get you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to listen to them fully, wholeheartedly, with curiosity, because we're going to train your inner critic to become your ally. Because I like to think of my inner critic as an adult with low emotional intelligence. So they want good things for you, but they're not really sure how to say it. And they're not really thinking about how what they're saying to you is going to affect you. They just know they want you to do this thing and they don't care how it gets done. So I want you to think of a time that your inner critic was powerful, it was loud, and it was giving you such a harsh time. And then the first thing I want you to do when you hear your inner critic is to acknowledge its presence. I want you to acknowledge that it's there. I want you to tell it that, hey, I can hear you and I am listening. I am there with you. Don't try to shove it down. Don't try to squeeze it out. Don't tell it, shoo, 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 we don't need you right now. You need to leave. I want you to listen wholeheartedly to what it's saying. Listen to everything that it's saying. Even when it hurts your stomach and it makes you feel terrible. I want you to listen to it because it has some information for you. And you can take notes as well. The next thing you're going to do is externalize it from you. So remember how we have the self and we have parts. I want you to externalize the critic from you. Take it outside of your body. And usually with acknowledging it, you know where it is. For me, it's usually a voice that's somewhat behind me. So then I can take this voice that's somewhat behind me and I can externalize it on my hand or as a person beside me. Now, the first time I did this, it was really hard because the critic thought I was going to try to get rid of it or hurt it or rewrite it in some way. So if it's particularly tough for you to externalize the critic, let it know that you just want to hear its concerns. You just want to have a conversation. You just want to talk. You want to know more about your inner critic. So after having this talk and letting it feel more comfortable, then ask it to come on your hand. Just stand on your hand here or be a person on another chair. It's up to you and the critic which one works best. Another thing I want you to note is treat the critic like your friend. Treat your critic like your friend. Have your critic know that you are here for its concerns. And after externalizing it, try to understand what it wants you to know. So this literally looks like for me, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to hear? What do you want me to understand from what you are saying to me? Because I know that you don't just want me to feel bad. You want something. You want me to know something. And then after listening to it, you're going to ask it its intention. What purpose? Does it want to protect you? Does it want you to be more cautious? Does it want you to do more research? What does it want you to know? What is the reason it's saying all of these nasty things to you? What is it trying to stop you from experiencing? Like, oh, remember that time that you tried riding a bike for the first time, but you had no idea what you were doing and you fell and you hit your toe? I don't want you to be hurt like that again. I don't want you to feel sad like that again. I don't want you to feel alone again. Maybe your inner critic wants something like that for you. Ask it, what's its role in your life? What do you need me to know? And usually after asking the intention, I thank my inner critic for wanting to protect me, for wanting me to not want to have a bad experience. Then, and this part is the most important part. This is like the conversion part. This is where you start to convert it to your ally. You need to ask effective questions. So let's take, for example, when it says you always fail. This is where the meta model comes in. It's like always. And then it starts thinking, maybe not always failing. You should know better. Should, according to who? Who says we should know better? So ask it very effective questions, especially when it uses unspecified verbs. Like, what if we fail? What does failure mean? What does failure mean to you? Ask your inner critic these questions directly, as if you were, in a sense, coaching somebody. In a sense, coaching somebody. Talk to your critic as if you were coaching another person. Talk to your critic like your friend who is about to do something kind of crazy and you just want to understand why they're doing this crazy thing. So you have to ask insightful questions. You have to ask really good questions so that you can get to the root of the criticism. And then from there, that's when we find out, what does your critic need so that it can calm down, so that it can be less worried about you. So this can look like asking directly, what do you need me to do so that you can feel better? What do you need? What evidence do you need from me so that you can be less concerned? And sometimes they just need evidence of your past successes. So let's say, similar to the bicycle example I gave you earlier, let's say the critic knows about that time that you rode the bicycle and you fell and you hit your toe and you were like extremely sad and you felt extremely lonely in that moment. But the critic failed to realize that you kept going and kept continuing, and eventually you learned to ride the bicycle. Because your critic isn't looking at that moment. The critic is zoned in into that failure that you had. So now what you can do is broaden its perspective. It's like, you're looking at this one time that I failed, but look at all these other wonderful memories I had because I kept trying. You could also introduce your critic to another part. So either as self, you could give the critic the memories, or ask another part to speak to the critic. And sometimes, well, my critic at this point, sometimes it just wants me, it just wants to tell me, it's like, hey, I don't feel confident about this right now. And I just want you to know we don't feel confident. It's like, okay, thanks. Thanks for letting me know that you don't feel confident and that we can work through this. And then usually at this point, after pacifying its needs, the harsh things that it was saying to you before, it gets diminished. For me, this looks like my part, like the critic. So let's say when I just externalize a critic, it's about this big. And then after speaking to it, it becomes this tiny, cute little thing. And because the critic finds itself useful, and I also find it useful, I put it back inside so that when another time comes up that I'm trying something new, or it's a form of pattern recognition, it can say, hey, we're a little worried about this thing. And when you practice this often with your inner critic, and you can also do it with other parts, you can do it with your emotions as well, you tend to feel a greater ease in life because you've because you've gotten more self-control. You've gotten more ways to deal with your concerns through validating yourself. Anybody got any questions before I walk you through the exercise? Any questions? Is there any parts that seem difficult to grasp?
Are there any parts of you that may have questions?
No? No questions? Darko?
I just want to add that working with inner critic is very important and it is very useful.
It is very useful.
I have worked with it a long time, many years, let's say. So at the beginning, it was really hard, but after some time, I realized that it is part of myself, and it helped me at some point in my life to move forward and to create a change. So it becomes first it's big and it becomes smaller and smaller. And I think it also that is the part of NLP and personal development process to become aligned and to accept all parts of ourselves.
Yeah, it is. It is because the more we come into alignment, is the greater and greater we have less conflict in ourselves, where you feel like, oh, I want to do this thing, but then another part of you is like, are you crazy? You can't do this thing. Don't do this thing. Are you a mad person? But when you hear it out and you find out like what it needs and what it wants so that you can move forward to do this thing, it becomes a lot easier. And then you have less pushback from your critic, because the critic knows that you know what you're doing. You're the captain of the ship for a reason.
Yes. You are the driver of the bus.
You're the driver of the bus.
Yes. Okay. I also want to comment the first slide where was the puzzle, but is it good now or maybe after you're going to finish the presentation?
Oh, we're gonna do it one more time, and this time I'm gonna walk you through the steps.
Okay.
So
okay.
I wanted to know if you had any questions about the process.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Let's go through the process.
Okay. Because for me, and also one more thing to like, is like, don't be afraid to talk to yourself. Don't be afraid. A lot of TV tells you that talking to yourself means you're crazy. Don't listen to that. Talk to yourself. You know you best. You are with you 24/7. You're with all these parts and all these things all the time. So yes, listen. Sometimes when I go for my daily walks, I'm walking like this because I like to put my parts on my hand and like see it like a small child. I like talking to my parts like they're children. And I am walking and I'm like, what's going on? Why are we kind of crazy right now? And I am walking and talking out loud. Like, really? Really no. Because when the part talks, there's no sound. It's talking in my head. But I'm talking out loud. And I'm walking and then I'm just like, you're so funny. And people are just looking at me like,
She's
she doesn't have
gone.
her
She's
gone.
thing. Yeah. Cool. There goes another one. Stressed out. I do
I
that
have
too
no
when
phone
I'm
in my
shower
hand.
when nobody else is around. So I don't seem like a crazy person.
Listen, I feel like crazy people have more happiness. Maybe I just have more happiness. Maybe that's and the crazy doesn't go together, but maybe it does, but I'm Just keep it together. So like I am a big advocate for talking to yourself and laughing with yourself and going back and forth with yourself. Because sometimes I'm like this, I'm talking to the critic, and then it's like, you know who would be better to talk to you? Another part. Here's my successful part. And then they're just talking and I'm just observing. Exactly like that.
The answers that you were seeking all along just by doing that. That's what many people don't understand. If you sit long enough with yourself, you will find the answers that you seek. If you do
Because
this,
the answers,
so you're paying thousands of dollars, hiring famous people to do something simple to, like this, to just sit for a while. And you will find the answers that you seek eventually with the right tools sometimes, but sitting does help that.
because a lot of the answers were inside you to begin with. Adrian, you wanted to say something? No? Okay, saw you unmuted. Okay, so are we all ready to take a masterclass in being a mad person? Talk to ourselves. So I want you to take a very deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, very slowly. Okay, now we're gonna go in through the nose for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And hold it for 3, 2, 1, 0. And then exhale for 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Then the next time you inhale, I want you to remember a time that your inner critic was very loud. Inhale. 4, 3, 2. And now I want you to turn up that inner critic. Imagine you have a dial. Turn it up. They're so loud right now. And exhale. And notice where you're hearing this sound. Where is this inner critic? Inhale again. Now I want you, if you're feeling any negative emotions from your inner critic, I want you to exhale sharply and let it go. Now I want you to acknowledge your inner critic. This can be saying, hey, I hear you. It could be a quiet acknowledgement, just noticing where the critic is coming from. Just listen to the critic and let it say everything that it wants to say. Let everything out. Next, I want you to invite the critic to stand on your table or stand on your hand, can sit beside you, wherever your critic would like to go, or where would you be most comfortable having your critic go. Just invite them to have a conversation with you. Let them know you want to understand them more. Let them know that you want to talk with them. Now, with your critic on the table or on your hand, I want you to ask them, what do you want me to know? And just listen for an answer. In the same way that they can tell you their nasty things when they're inside your head, they can also tell you when they're externalized and outside of you. And when they're finished telling you, ask them, and is there anything else? When they're finished telling you everything that they need you to know, tell them thank you. And if it's useful to you, you can validate them one more time and let them know that you really just want to hear what they have to say. Next, I want you to ask them, what is your intention? What purpose is it that you have to tell me these things? Another way to ask is, what are you trying to stop me from experiencing? And when they tell you, if any emotions come up, you should allow yourself to feel these emotions. And with your inner critic telling you their purpose and what they want you to not experience, you should thank them for letting you know. Because a little gratitude goes a long way. And I think after many years of pushing down your inner critic, they'd be very happy to know that you're happy that they're there. So now this part, it's a little tough for me to guide you through without content, but ask them, and for whatever scenario it is, ask them again to clarify. Ask them, who told you that this won't work? You can ask things like, who told you that this won't work? Who or where is this coming from? What memory are you looking at? Whatever questions that gives you more information about what they said in the initial part, you ask them that now. And be brave. Ask them anything that comes up, anything at all. Any thoughts that you might have, any concerns that you might have about what they have said, go ahead and ask them. But at this point, have a full conversation with your inner critic. And when you think you have found the root of the criticism, you can go ahead and give me a nod. And it might also be helpful to think, if this is a critic that you've had since you were a child, it might be helpful to see what adult in your life are they mimicking. For me, at one point, my inner critic would mimic my aunt, would mimic my mom. And then think about, what intention did this person have for me when they said this thing? What positive intention? Maybe they wanted to protect you. Maybe they didn't want you to get hurt from failing. Maybe they were scared that if you failed, it might affect them in some way. And then decide, is that useful for you? Ask the critic, is this useful for us? And when you feel like you have gotten to the tip of the criticism, the deepest point of where this may be coming from, ask your critic now, what do I need to give you? What could I give you? What could I tell you? What could help you to be more at ease? What would satisfy your need to protect me? What would satisfy your fear of abandonment, of rejection? Who do you need to talk to? What do you need to see? What do you need to hear? How do you need to feel? Or do you just need me to listen to you? And trust that the critic knows exactly what it needs. And if it is that you find that the critic needs something like more research, and you can't find that inside yourself, you can reassure your critic that you will do more research. And then you gotta go do it. Because promises to ourselves are the deepest promises we can make. And the critic will be looking out for you following through on that promise. So even if it isn't something that you can give it immediately, problem solve together to find out how you guys can work together until you can pacify. And when you've heard its concerns, ask it, and what else? Because sometimes it needs more than one thing. Sometimes it just needs one. It depends on the situation. It depends on her needs, his needs, their needs, its needs. And don't be afraid to give suggestions. Because sometimes your inner critic, well, mine, it's a child and it doesn't know any better. So ask it, do you think if we did this, that could help? And as you feel your critic becoming more and more at ease through having this conversation, whenever you think you're ready, I want you to invite the critic, whenever it's ready, to go back inside. I want you to remember that this is a process that you can do with your other parts as well. It doesn't only have to be your critic. I have done this with my anxiety, with my fear of abandonment, because Your parts aren't only thoughts. They can be beliefs. They can be emotions. They can be a lot of things. They can even be memories or a culmination of memories that creates the part. So, how was that for you?
Boom! You made it here! Good on you. Make sure you click the subscribe button below and check out the playlist at the end. If you'd like to come along to our Sunday sessions where we host a live free Q&A for our students and members, you're welcome. I'll see you there.